Hi friends, welcome back to part 2 of the Crochet Baby Milestone Blanket. At this point you should have made all of your number blocks, and now we're going to move on to this middle panel, the part that you'll lay baby on to take photos. These are the instructions to make the middle panel. You can pause the video while you work the middle panel, and then you can continue on to the assembly portion of the video. Alright, so we have our panel made, and now we're going to be attaching all of our blocks around the blanket. I'm going to zoom out and show you the order in which I would recommend attaching everything. So your middle panel lays out in the middle. I would do numbers 1 and 2 first, seam along this top line. Then on the side, you'll lay out numbers 0, 4, 6, and 8, and seam along this line. Next, I'll lay out number 3, 5, 7, and 9, and seam along this line. Lastly, I'll lay out numbers 10, 11, and 12, and seam the bottom. And then you'll want to go back and individually seam in between each number. So I'll be showing you how to work the mattress stitch. This is my preferred seaming method because it creates an invisible seam, but you may use any seaming method that you'd like. Now, you might notice your sizing is just a little bit off from piece to piece just due to your changing gauge. That's okay because we have the same number of stitches across the 2 blocks and the middle panel, so you'll still end up with the right number of stitches. So grab a separate piece of yarn, and you want it to be 3 times the length that you are seaming on your work. Cut it off and attach one end to your yarn needle. And we'll be starting in the corner. Now, if you're left-handed, you can start on the left side. The same instructions will apply, but I'll be starting on the right side. And we're going to always be working not into this top loop. We want to work into the bottom loops of both of our panels. You see there's a top and bottom loop. We're always going to be only working into the bottom loops for the mattress stitch. So we're going to locate the corner of our work. And this corner looks a little wonky because of the slip stitch join. We're going to try to look past it as much as we can. So we're going to first locate the chain 1 corner here and identify the bottom loop of that and insert your yarn needle, that's the chain 1 corner, insert your yarn needle down into that bottom loop. Then locate the next stitch just past the weird slip stitch join hump. And you want to insert up through the bottom loop of that next stitch. So go down the chain 1 corner and then up the next stitch and pull the rest of your yarn through just enough to leave a tail to weave in at the end. Next, we'll go to the opposing panel. We'll find that chain 1 loop and go down into that and find the next stitch right here. And we'll go up into the bottom loop of that next stitch. Again, you're always only working into those bottom loops. And pull your yarn all the way through. Come back to the lower panel. Now, this time you want to locate the stitch that you previously came out from. And it's okay if the strand is loose for the moment. But you previously came out of this stitch right here. You see that coming out of that stitch there? So this spot is where we want to work into now. We want to insert our yarn needle down through that same stitch that we had come out from previously and up through the next stitch. Pull your yarn all the way through. Again, it's okay if your strands in between the 2 pieces stay loose. We'll tighten that up later. Find the same stitch you worked out from last time. And we're going to go down and then up through the next stitch. Oh, I'm having a little trouble grabbing it. down the previous one and up through the next one. And pull your yarn all the way through. Every so often you can pull on the yarn and that's going to tighten that seam, making it seemingly invisible. I usually do a couple inches of stretch at a time before I tighten my yarn up. It just makes it a little easier. So go down into the stitch you previously came out from, up through the next one. You'll always be switching back and forth between which piece you're working into. So go up to the other piece, down the previous stitch, up through the next one. Pull all the way through. And again, down into the previous one, up through the next one. Now, while you still have your seam loose, it's going to look like this. I personally prefer working with it loose for as long as I can. It's just easier for me to identify the previous stitches. But every inch or two, you want to go ahead and give this a tight pull, and your seam disappears like that. And it's a very secure, tight seam. So go ahead and continue working this method. I will meet you back briefly in the video when we get to this first chain one corner here at the end of the first block. So you've worked all the way across your first block. You have a nice clean seam, and your pieces are very securely sewed together. And we still have more to go when we attach the number 1. Now, all of the chain 1 corners on your blocks are going to count as a stitch. I have yet to work into the chain 1 corner of this 2 block, so I'm going to do that with you now. So I'm going to locate, this is the chain 1 corner. So I'm in my last previous stitch, go up through the chain 1 corner, just the bottom stitch, or just the bottom loop, as if it's just any other normal stitch, and then I'll continue along the middle panel, and the next stitch was going to be in the chain 1 corner of the next block. So I've located it, and go down into the chain 1 corner, up through the next stitch, and pull through. So there's really no specific transition at joining a new block onto the blanket. You just keep going with the same method, treating all chain 1 corners as a stitch. Continue on to the end of this first section that you're sewing together, and I'll show you how to fasten off your yarn at the end of seaming a row. All right, I've worked all the way across my first row of seaming, and I just have to work into the corners now. Now we'll do something slightly different at the end here. So I haven't worked into any of my corners yet. So first I'll work into the chain 1 corner of my number 1 because that's what's next for me here. I'll do the last stitch and chain 1 corner of my middle block. And then I'm going to pull nice and tight, make sure I've pulled my seam all the way through. There's nothing loose. And now I'm going to work into the chain 1 corner of the opposing block again. Doesn't matter if you've ended on the 1 or on the middle panel, just work back up into that first chain 1 again. And that's really going to secure the end of that seam for you. At this point, you can weave in the end. Personally, I ended up with enough length left over that I'm going to keep this attached for when I have the 0 block and let's see, I believe it's the 4 block at this point, at this juncture, so I can continue seaming across. but you might not have enough left for that, and that's okay. I would just go ahead and weave it in, and you can attach a new strand later. Go ahead and start seaming your number 0 on this next row, and I'm going to meet you right back here at this 4-corner juncture. There's really nothing different about the 4-corner juncture. You're going to treat it the exact same. Even though you've already worked into these chain 1s here, you can work into them again from this new line that you're attaching. So I worked into that chain 1 again that I've done previously, worked into the chain 1 of the 0 block, or whichever block you're doing at the moment. And then on this middle panel, I've already worked into this chain 1 previously, but I can work into it again going this new direction. So let's see. Looks like this is the chain 1 and this is the first stitch. Pull all the way through. Working through these chain 1 corners again will really secure these corners and make them nice and tight. And of course, attaching a new block is nothing new. We've already done this a couple times before. And just like that, you have all 4 corners attached. And you can just continue as normal. Now, later on, you're going to be coming back and seaming this line between the 0 and the 4, the one that's going vertical up my screen right now. And you'll be working into those chain 1 corners once again, into those 0 chain 1 corner and the 4 chain 1 corner. So every chain 1 corner around your blanket is going to be worked into twice at some point. So I have this strand is going to be working vertically to seam that row up later on. You'll continue doing this until your whole blanket is sewed together and you have your final baby milestone blanket. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, if you need some extra assistance with the rows written out or having grid lines in the charts, I recommend purchasing the PDF, which is linked below. But otherwise, let me know how you enjoyed the pattern and let me know who you're making this for. I would love to hear. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.